For 40 years, a man claimed to be Marlon Brando's son, but no one believed him. Hollywood labeled him a liar. The Brando family disowned him. The media branded him just another fanboy. But when Brando died in 2004, an envelope surfaced. Inside was a DNA test result. And that test result destroyed the lie the Brando family had defended for 40 years with a single page. Now the question was, if he really was Brando's son, why was he rejected for 40 years? And more importantly, did Brando know the truth? If you're ready for this story to shake you up, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications, because we regularly bring you these kinds of hidden truths about Hollywood. America was burning. The civil rights movement was in the streets. Martin Luther King was marching in Washington. And Marlon Brando, Hollywood's biggest star, was at the forefront of the protests. But Brando's activism wasn't limited to blacks. He was also one of the most passionate advocates for Native Americans. He visited reservations, attended meetings, and financed their rights struggles with his own money. And it was during one of these reservation visits that Brando met someone who would change his life forever. Her name was Maria. She was 23 years old, of Dakota descent, a black-haired, dark-eyed Native American activist. She was teaching at the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota and fighting for the rights of her people. Brando saw her at a meeting. Maria was talking about the children's right to education on the reservation. She spoke about how the government hadn't built the schools it had promised, how the teachers weren't being paid, how children were dying of hunger. As Brando listened to her speak, he felt something shift. This wasn't just a cause, it was a passion, and the fire in Maria's eyes drew Brando in. That evening, Brando talked with Maria for hours about the state of the reservation, Hollywood's hypocrisy, method acting, the meaning of life. Maria found Brando different from other celebrities. He hadn't just come to take pictures. He was really listening. He really cared. And that night, in a small cabin on the Pine Ridge Reservation, something began between two people. A relationship, secret, dangerous, and completely impossible. Because in 1963, a white Hollywood star being with a Native American woman was social suicide. It could have ended his career. It could have destroyed his family. And Brando knew it. But he couldn't stop himself. Over the following months, Brando and Maria met secretly. When Brando got time off from sets, he would fly to South Dakota. He would spend secret days with Maria on the reservation. No one knew. The press didn't follow him, because no one cared what Brando was doing on the reservations. Everyone thought he was just an activist. But the truth was much deeper. Brando was in love with Maria, and Maria with Brando. Two people from different worlds had found each other in a shared pain. Brando's pain was the falseness of Hollywood. Maria's pain was the destruction of her people. In late 1964, Maria became pregnant, and everything changed. Brando panicked, because a child could expose everything. What would happen if the press found out? What would happen if the studios found out? What would happen if his wife, Anna Kashfi, found out? Brando was already going through a divorce at the time, and the courts were tormenting him over child custody. Another child, another scandal, would be the end of his career. But Maria thought differently. She wanted that baby. She didn't understand Brando's fears. "This child is not a disgrace, it's a gift," said Maria. But Brando wasn't convinced. And so a deal was made. A deal that would ruin a man's life for 40 years. Brando gave Maria money. A lot of money. He bought her a house. He paid her medical bills. But he set one condition. The child would not take his surname. The child's existence would remain secret. Maria would raise him alone, and Brando would never acknowledge his paternity. Maria resisted at first, but Brando was insistent. "I'm doing this to protect this child," he said, "to keep him away from Hollywood's filth, to save him from becoming a media target." Maria wanted to believe him. She did. And in the spring of 1965, in a small clinic on the Pine Ridge Reservation, a baby boy was born. He didn't cry when he was born. He just looked around quietly. It was as if he knew from the moment he came into the world that he had to remain a secret. Maria named the child Michael Flying Hawk. He had no Brando surname, only Maria's surname, Flying Hawk. Michael grew up on the reservation, like other Native American children, in poverty. But Maria tried to give him a good life. With the money Brando sent, the money came regularly, every month. But there were no letters, no phone calls, just money. As if Brando was silencing his conscience with money. When Michael turned 4, his mother told him the truth. "Your father is Marlon Brando," she said. Little Michael didn't know who Marlon Brando was, of course. They didn't have a television at home. There was no cinema on the reservation. But Maria showed him photos, scenes from The Godfather, scenes from a streetcar named Desire. "This is your father, a world-famous actor, but he can't recognize you because his world is too dangerous." Michael didn't understand. How could a father not recognize his own child? But Maria insisted. "He's protecting you, from afar, without being seen." Years passed. Michael grew up. He started school. He made friends. And one day, when he was 10, a teacher at school mentioned Marlon Brando's films. Michael raised his hand. "He's my father," he said. The class laughed. The teacher laughed too. "No, Michael. Marlon Brando isn't your father. He's a movie star." But Michael insisted. "My mother said so. He's my father." The teacher called Maria. Maria confirmed it. "Yes, Marlon Brando is Michael's father." But there was no proof, no documents. The father section on the birth certificate was blank. The teacher looked at Maria with pity. "I understand. Sometimes we tell our children beautiful stories." And that day, the first stamp of a lie was placed on Michael's life. Liar, dreamer, a child with no connection to reality. When he turned 15, Michael wanted to meet his father. Maria wrote a letter to Brando. No reply came. She wrote again. Silence again. Finally, a reply came from a lawyer, Brando's lawyer. The letter was cold and clear. "Mr. Brando has no such son. Please do not contact us again, otherwise legal action will be taken." Maria tore up the letter. She didn't show it to Michael. But Michael understood. His father didn't want him. To his father, he was a disgrace, a mistake, a secret. In 1983, Michael turned 18 and left the reservation. He went to Los Angeles. To find his father, he went to Hollywood. But how would he find Marlon Brando? Would he just knock on his door? Brando was living in a huge villa on Mulholland Drive at the time, but it was surrounded by security. One day, Michael went to the door of that villa. He knocked. A security guard came out. "What do you want, kid?" Michael hesitated. Then he said, "I'm Marlon Brando's son. I need to talk to him." The security guard laughed. "Yeah, right. You and 10,000 others. Get out of here or I'll call the police." Michael left. But that night, he waited outside the villa. He waited for Brando to come out. But no one came out. He waited until morning. Then the police arrived. "What are you doing here?" Michael tried to explain. I'm Brando's son. The police smiled. Of course you are. Now leave or we'll arrest you. Michael left, and he never returned. For 90 years, Michael tried to live a normal life. He got married, he had children, he worked in construction. But there was always a void inside him. Growing up without a father wasn't the problem. The problem was knowing his father existed, but not being able to reach him. Knowing his father was world famous, but not knowing him. Michael sometimes saw Brando on television, in interviews, in documentaries, and every time he thought the same thing. He's my father, but he never thinks about me. I don't exist for him. In 1995, Maria died of cancer. When Michael lost his mother, he lost his last connection. He no longer had any reason to reach out to Brando, because Maria had cared about him. But Brando never did. Michael didn't cry at the funeral, because he was angry to his mother. Why didn't you believe him, Mum? He thought. Why didn't you leave him? Why did you always protect him? But it was too late now. Maria was gone, and with her, the only proof was gone too. In 2001, Michael saw a newspaper article. Brando had confessed his bisexuality in an interview, and he had talked about his other secret relationships. As Michael read the article, he realized something. Brando wasn't ashamed of his secrets. He was revealing them. So why was he still hiding him? Michael made a decision that day. He would get a DNA test, and he would prove the truth. But how? How would he get a DNA sample from Brando? Michael hired a private investigator, and the investigator found a way. He took a napkin from a restaurant Brando frequented. Brando had wiped his mouth with that napkin. There was saliva. There was DNA. Was it legal? No. But Michael didn't care. He just wanted to know the truth. The napkin was sent to a lab. It was compared to Michael's DNA. And 2 weeks later, the results came back. With a 99.9% probability, Michael and Marlon Brando were biologically father and son. The paper trembled in Michael's hand. 40 years. For 40 years, he had been called a liar, a dreamer. And here was the proof. Scientific, irrefutable proof. Michael sent the test to Brando's lawyers, along with a letter. Enough with the lies. Here's the proof. I am your son, and now you know it. The reply came 3 months later, from the lawyer again. But this time the tone was different. Mr. Brando has received your letter and the test results. He is currently considering the matter. Please, be patient. Be patient. 40 years later, still be patient. Michael laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. In the summer of 2004, Brando's health deteriorated. Pneumonia, heart problems. He was hospitalized, and Michael received a message from Brando's lawyer. Mr. Brando wants to talk to you, but not face to face. He will write a letter. Please wait. Michael waited. Days passed. Weeks passed. And finally, on July 1st, 2004, an envelope arrived. In Brando's handwriting, Michael's name was on the address. Michael Flying Hawk. He didn't open the envelope. He held it in his hand. For hours. For days. But he didn't open it, because he knew what was inside. It could have been an apology. It could be an explanation. Or it could be another lie. And Michael didn't want to hear any of it anymore. Brando died on the evening of July 1st, 2004. Michael heard the news the next day. On television, the news anchor said, "Cinema legend Marlon Brando has died at the age of 80. Michael turned off the television, and he looked at the envelope. It was still unopened. His wife said to him, "Maybe you should open it. Maybe there's something important." But Michael shook his head. For 40 years, he treated me like I was unnecessary. For 40 years, I tried to reach him. Each time, I was rejected. Now he's dead. And now he wants to talk, but it's too late. I don't want to hear it anymore. The letter was never opened. Michael put it in a drawer and tried to forget, but he couldn't forget. Because a few weeks later, Brando's will was announced. He had left an inheritance to 11 children. But Michael's name wasn't there. It wasn't mentioned at all. It was as if he had never existed. Michael's lawyer said, "We can fight it with a DNA test. We can claim your inheritance rights." But Michael didn't want to. "I don't want his money. I just wanted him to acknowledge me. But he didn't do that, so I don't need his money either." In 2005, Michael spoke to a journalist. For the first time, he told his story. He showed the DNA test. He showed the letter. But he didn't open it. The journalist asked, "Why don't you open it?" Michael replied, "Because whatever is written in that letter won't change the past. It won't bring back my childhood. It won't bring back the times he should have recognized me. Maybe he's apologizing. Maybe he's explaining. But I don't want an apology anymore. I don't want it because the apology is too late. 40 years too late." That interview aired, and the media exploded. Headlines read, "Brando's secret Native American son revealed." The Brando family denied it. "This man is a fraud. The DNA test could be fake." But science was speaking, and science doesn't lie. Some of Brando's children supported Michael. "If he really is our brother, we want to embrace him," they said. But some rejected him. "Our father didn't recognize him, so we won't either." Michael is now over 60. He still lives near the Pine Ridge reservation. He has a grandchild, a modest life. He received nothing from the Brando inheritance because he wanted nothing. But inheritance isn't just money. Inheritance is also identity. And Michael finally found his identity. He was Marlon Brando's son, even if the world didn't believe it, even if the family didn't accept it. The DNA didn't lie. The letter is still unopened, in Michael's house, in a drawer, yellowed, forgotten. But not really forgotten, because every time Michael looks at it, he feels something. Curiosity? No. Anger? Not anymore. Just sadness. Deep, silent sadness. Because that letter isn't just a piece of paper. It's a father's belated confession. And words a son will never hear. Brando's legacy of activism is still talked about today. His refusal of the Oscar in 1973. His support for Native American rights. Sachin Littlefeather taking the stage. But no one talks about Maria. No one talks about Michael. Because they weren't the activism Brando was proud of. They were the reality Brando was ashamed of. And Hollywood loves proud stories, not shameful realities. If you ask Michael if he forgave his father, he pauses. "You have to know someone to forgive them," he says. "I never knew him. I only saw him on screen, in The Godfather, in Streetcar. And that man was not my father. He was an actor. My father was the man who made promises to Maria and didn't keep them. My father was the man who chose silence for 40 years. My father was the man who couldn't even speak after he died." He paused. Then he added, "To forgive someone, you have to know them. I never knew him. So there's no forgiveness. Only forgetting. And I'm trying to forget." Journalists still ask Michael, "Aren't you curious about what's in that letter?" Michael gives the same answer every time. "I wonder about it every day, but I don't open it. Because if I open that letter, something will change. Maybe I'll understand him. Maybe I'll feel sorry for him. Maybe they'll forgive him. And I don't want to forgive." Because forgiving would normalize what he did. It would normalize rejecting a child for 40 years. And that's not normal. Brando's other children experienced their own traumas. Christian became a murderer. Cheyenne committed suicide. The others struggled with addiction, depression, and identity crises. But none of their stories are as strange as Michael's, because at least they experienced rejection face to face. Brando knew them, then let them down. But Michael was never known. He was just a ghost, present but absent, real but denied. And that's another kind of pain, deeper, more lasting. The DNA test hangs on the wall in Michael's house today, framed like a diploma. It says, probability of paternity, 99.9%. There's a small plaque underneath. Michael's words. Science spoke, but the father remained silent. Visitors are surprised when they see that frame. Why did you hang it on the wall? They ask. Michael smiles. A bitter smile. Because all my life I was called a liar. People didn't believe me. Now there's scientific proof. And every day I look at it and remember, I wasn't lying. They were. When Brando died, many newspapers wrote the end of a legend. But for Michael, it wasn't the end of a legend. It was the beginning of a lie. Because death made Brando even more legendary. It erased his mistakes. It forgave his sins. And it made Michael even more invisible. Because who wants to question a legend? Who wants to see the mud on a god's feet? It took Michael years to talk to his own children about Brando. When they asked, "Who was Grandpa?" Michael didn't answer at first. Then one day, when his eldest son turned 14, he told him everything. His son listened. Then he asked, "Dad, did you ever want to see him?" Michael thought. A long silence. Then he answered, "I wanted to every day, but I don't anymore, because if I saw him, I wouldn't know what to say. Am I angry? Yes. Am I broken? Yes. But have I forgiven him? I don't know. That's why I don't want to see him. Because if I did, I know I wouldn't feel what I should feel." When Michael watches Brando's films today, he sees something else. Everyone sees Vito Corleone, but Michael sees a father who protects his children but forgets one of them. Everyone sees Stanley Kowalski's brutality, but Michael sees the helplessness of a man suppressing his emotions. Everyone sees a great actor, but Michael only sees a lost father. People ask me, "What's it like to be Marlon Brando's son?" says Michael. And I tell them I don't know, because I'm not Marlon Brando's son. I am Maria Flying Hawk's son. My mother raised me. My mother protected me. My mother taught me love. Marlon Brando is just a name in my DNA. I have no real connection to him. And it took years to accept that. But now I am at peace, because I no longer want to be his son. I am my mother's son, and that is enough. Michael's final words. If I ever open that letter, I'll share it with you, but I don't think I will. Because some truths shouldn't be spoken, some words shouldn't be heard, and some fathers shouldn't be fathers.